Well, it's 6 o'clock, and so I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Ken is just coming in right now. Uh, I would remind everybody that when you're not talking, to go ahead and mute your device so we don't get a lot of background noise. We will forego the Pledge of Allegiance because it will be very awkward having everybody try and stand up and no flag and only seeing everybody's belt buckle. And so at this point, I'm going to ask Trustee Banducci to read the mission statement, which we do at the beginning of every meeting. So Trustee Banducci, could you go ahead?
All right, the mission statement for North Idaho College is as follows. North Idaho College meets the diverse educational needs of students, employers, and the Northern Idaho communities it serves through a commitment to student success, educational excellence, community engagement, and lifelong learning.
Thank you, Trustee Banducci. We do have a quorum. We have all 5 trustees online, and we have the college lawyer online as well. Any questions, comments, additions, or deletions to the minutes from the previous meeting? Hearing none, the minutes will be approved as they stand. Shannon, from the message I got from you, we do not have any public comment. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chair Dunlap.
Okay. We are not having a celebrating success tonight because of the COVID-19 and the havoc that has created on campus. We do have constituent reports, and I believe we have 2 that were submitted in writing. We had Tom Green's and one other one. And the other 2 constituents, I believe, are going to report out tonight. So the first, let's see, is what's that, Shannon?
Chris Pelchat for faculty will not be present tonight.
Okay.
It is in writing late this afternoon, and I will get that to the trustees.
All right. So it looks like the only one we have reporting out tonight then would be Ben Tashida, who represents the Senate. So Ben, if you'd like to go ahead and report out to us, that'd be great.
All right, yeah. I also submitted in writing as well. Hopefully you got that document, but I'm happy to go through that as well.
We did, thank you.
Awesome. So yeah, the College Senate has not met since the last Board of Trustees meeting. We had a couple of scheduled meetings. One of them, the first one in February, we were able to cancel just because we didn't have any new business. And then in March, we had 2 meetings, one scheduled last Thursday and one this upcoming Thursday. Both ended up getting canceled due to the coronavirus. This week, student senators were on spring break, so we wanted to make sure we had an opportunity for them to comment on the business we have, which is not time sensitive in any way. So we went ahead and canceled that one. The plan at this point for April is to go ahead and do a Zoom meeting for our April meeting. Hopefully that'll work. It'll be our first time doing a digital broadcast of our meeting. So I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ben. Any questions for Ben? All right, thank you very much, Ben. And I skipped over Paul McLeod, and he's going to report out for ASNIC. So Paul, you're up.
Hello. Good afternoon, Chair Dunlap, other trustees, President McLennan, members of the audience. Thank you for joining us. I hope that you're all in good health today. So I'm going to keep my report relatively brief. I just want to let you know briefly what I and the other ASNIC senators are up to. As you know, this is spring break, which was brought on a little bit early, but senators are still keeping busy. We're going to be continuing to be working on this from home mostly, and fulfilling office hours at home. We did have a resolution that Abby wrote and Emily Parson both co-wrote that was directed towards the well, it was regarding student workers and getting continued pay. That was actually just recently released by the college that they would be continuing to pay student workers that are part-time. So we're really, really glad to hear that news. And let's see. ASNIC is also committed to giving $10,000 of its funds to help support students. We found that this would be incredible use of our money, especially since we're no longer able to do events. This would be, in a time of crisis like this, the best use of those funds. That's all I have to report out, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Paul. Any questions or comments for Paul?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Trustee Wood.
just a quick comment. Paul, that commitment from ASNIC is going to mean a lot to the students, and I think it shows a lot of leadership. And thank you for you and your fellow leaders for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Chair Dunlap.
Yes,
Trustee
Trustee Banducci.
Hey, Paul, I'm not trying to put you on the spot at all, but I'm curious. That's a significant amount of money, which is amazing and outstanding. How do you see you guys helping some of the folks, or what are the avenues or venues for you to do that? I mean, what are the apparatuses in place, or how are you gonna distribute that money? Yeah, still formulating a plan, or do you have some thoughts you could share on that?
That's an excellent question. There are a number of different things that we could do since school is being, for the most part, transitioned to online. We want to make sure that students who are unable to pay their internet or whatever the case may be are able to access internet. We also want to, if students are in need of food, really, if a student is in need of any is in any crisis, they can reach out to us. As far as a plan for how we'll be distributing those goes out, it's basically they reach out to us, and we want to communicate with students what we're able to do, and if they are in any trouble, to come talk to us.
What can we do? What can Dr. McLennan and the staff do to assist you, Paul, in getting the word out that you do have some funds available to assist folks? How do you want to do? What can be done to help you with that?
Thank you. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure. I think we'll be communicating through the college what we do have, and letting students know that way. Just letting people know if they come to you is the best way that I can think of.
May I suggest, Paul, that, oh, I'm sorry, either yourself or someone reach out to Maureen Dolan and have that in the Nick Now, possibly?
Yeah, we could absolutely do something like that.
Chair Dunlap, this is Graydon. Can I jump in and respond to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Dunlap, Trustee Banducci. Paul, thanks for fielding that as well. First of all, ASNIC has been fabulous, not only in providing that financial assistance, but being actively engaged in protecting their constituents for the maintaining wages throughout this period of time that they can't work, and also just wanting to message to their peers about things will be okay. Here's stuff that you can do, be successful in school. So Paul and his team have been hugely successful. The financial part they've invested in our office, and we have a portion of our team who's administering that. Alex and myself and Lynn from the office are administering the dollars. We already had an emergency aid application available. We've had 5 or 6 students already apply. It's been everything from some partial housing for a couple students to isolate, to some food costs, an inhaler, to internet access, so a variety of needs. And so those are being fielded in our office after being funded by ASNIC that way. And so we've got this process in place in terms of letting people know through advising. They're sharing that with their advisees. I know instructional leadership talked to their team about it. We've had messaging going out to students. I'm following up with another one to all students tonight that will goes to all students, that will mention that emergency aid is available to them through this process, and also to students that are in workforce training and the ABE program as well, so that we have funds to help all the students who are connected to us.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Trustee.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
If I could follow up with Graydon. Graydon, we've talked about ASNIC's emergency fund, and that's fantastic they're doing that. Wondering if the college itself has thought about matching those funds with a $10,000 emergency fund. That would be something that the president would certainly have purview for, would not need board action. It's a small amount of money. Wondering if there's been any discussion about that.
Trustee Dunlap, Chair Dunlap, and Trustee Wood. In fact, we had a discussion about that earlier today. We have some funds remaining, many of you remember, from the Village project that weren't all expended. And we made the provision today to allocate that. That will at least match, and I think continue to provide for needs that need to be met. ASNIC did leave the door open too, because of the savings that they have this spring, that they could add to the fund. So I think we've got two pretty good pots, but we don't know how long this will last. There was some conversation, I think even Trustee Banducci alluded to, what can we do? You know, there might be a time that we might be talking through the foundation to our to all our constituents and our supporters about here are needs that exist, and maybe people can be contributing to a fund through the foundation. That might come along as well.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Paul? Hearing none, we'll move on to the president's report.
Thank you, Trustee Dunlap, members of the board. Well, to say these are interesting times would be an understatement. The last couple weeks has involved a lot of change for the entire community, for the world, certainly for North Idaho College. I've attempted to try to keep the board up to date on communications. You've received several over the last week or so, including one today that outlines some steps we're taking with college with payroll for full and part-time employees. I want to extend my appreciation to Paul and ASNIC for their generosity in looking at how they're going to tend to the welfare of students. Those are active discussions internally. Our biggest concern in all of this transition right now really are twofold: the safety of our employees and our students and everybody, but also you know, we deal with at-risk students and students who in many cases need a lot of support to be here and be successful. And we've just, you know, they've just been thrown into a lot of disruption, and at the same time, our faculty have been thrown into a lot of disruption, and everybody's trying to do the best they can to move forward and meet the needs of the students in the institution through all the learning objectives. And I couldn't be more proud or pleased of the teamwork that I've seen taking place and people stepping up to do some really, really hard work. We announced last Friday that we would be building out our remote work capabilities. That work continued through actually the week before, and that work continued through last week. On Monday, we began working primarily remotely. We suspended classes this week, gave a bonus spring break to students, and they will return on virtually on April 6th. and remain in a virtual experience for the remainder of the semester. The reason for suspending classes this week was to give faculty and staff time to continue the migration of as much as we possibly can from a face-to-face format into a virtual format. And Dr. Burns will be able to talk a little bit more about that if needed, about the actual percentage of courses. When I asked yesterday, we think we're somewhere in the 85+% range of being able to move that much of our effort into an online format instructionally. And then, of course, all the support services that go along with that. There will be, there's work that's currently being done to still try to handle the moving pieces of this, including a possible extension of the semester and looking how we're going to make up some of the work that can't be moved into a virtual environment, perhaps through incomplete in the summer semester. Besides COVID-19 and all the all that's entailed, and we have that further down on the agenda where we can provide more information in detail. Overall, I think we're in good shape. The governor did issue a stay-at-home order today that took us from what we were designating as phase 3 of our operational plan to phase 4. Really didn't change a whole lot because the intent of phase 3 was to prepare for an eventuality that we would be doing most of what we do in a virtual remote work environment, and we're just about there. The only other things that I'll mention here in my report is that there's been a lot of discussion about the higher education funding model and the president's and the governor's work group on that. That work has been suspended because of the current context that we're in with COVID-19. And that will conclude my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for President McLennan?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Trustee Wood.
Thank you. Rick, first of all, congratulations on just really good leadership the last couple of weeks. You've really stepped up, you and your team. Now, you've mentioned a lot about the gearing up for the remote work product, and I can only imagine that took some extra funding as well to get that technology on board. I don't know if you have that dollar amount available, but also if you could talk about maybe being able to recapture those funds as an emergency clause down the road.
So we are tracking to the best of our ability all of the expenses that are additive because of COVID-19, and the intent for doing that is that we'll be positioned to apply for or receive any of the monies that might become available through the state or the federal government. There is, and I just got this earlier today, so I'm not prepared to give a lot of information about it, but in the federal package that was approved does have a higher education piece in it, and we're in the process of trying to understand what that means. Primarily, that's aid that's going to come in the form of aid to students, financial aid, but there's also a portion for the colleges to be able to direct it towards operations. So I don't have any exact numbers right now. We know that there's going to be additional expenses, especially if we extend the semester and some of the other things that we're talking about, but we are tracking it.
Thank you.
Chair Dunlap?
Yeah, Trustee Murray.
Yeah, for Rick, just wanted to extend my thanks to you, and your cabinet, but even further than that, to all the instructors that are trying to put together virtual programs in very little time. Whatever we can do for students on the other end of that, because virtual learning isn't the easiest way to go, but for all the work that everybody's been doing, I just want to make sure I said thank you. It's tough times, and great leadership in this time will get us through. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, President McLennan. Next, we have Meyer Health Science Building Expansion Update, Vice President Martin. And Vice President Martin, hopefully you'll discuss a little bit about what we discussed at our budget workshop that preceded this board meeting.
Chair Howard, members of the board, Chair Dunlap, members of the board, wanted to just provide a small update. We are moving along really, really well on that project to the point that it's going to be shovel ready and complete with full review by the middle of April. Given the changes and uncertainty fiscally as well as with enrollment, what we discussed in the board workshop on budget was a potential pause on that project, putting a hold on that at this time, not moving forward with a bid, and reevaluating this at the end of this current calendar year so that we could hit the bid environment really in a great place in the beginning of 2021. The thought process behind that primarily is to provide the college maximum liquidity and access to funds in this very uncertain time. And one of the positives that would come out of a pause is the potential for us to bid this building in a much more favorable bid environment than we're walking into at this moment.
There was some discussion and thought that with the board providing approval for the project and to move forward with it, that within that authority, there also rested the ability to postpone the bid process if necessary. I don't know if other trustees have any further comments about that or not, but we'd certainly welcome those. All right, hearing none, any other updates regarding the project, Vice President Martin?
I would just share my sincere appreciation to the faculty who've been involved in this project. These are always duties above and beyond the assignment when you go into building design, and they have been especially flexible in creating, I think, what is frankly a really fantastic design for this project. And if we do move forward with a postponement, I want to just share my thanks for the dedication that the faculty and the division chairs and the deans have put into this project. It's really been a fantastic project, and my hope would be this would be just that. It would be a pause, and that this project would come back in the near future.
Okay, thank you, Vice President Martin. Next, under old business, we have the second reading of the Head Start grant process with Beth Ann Fuller.
Chair Dunlap, board members, president, cabinet, and guests, thank you for allowing me to present the second reading of the North Idaho College Head Start Baseline Grant application, which is our year one of our 5-year grant, and attachments A through F that were presented last month. And I'm hoping if anybody has any other questions about that I can answer those at this time.
Questions, comments for Beth Ann Fuller?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the application as presented.
Do I hear a second to that motion?
Second from Brad.
Any further discussion on the motion to approve the grant application? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Beth Ann.
Thank you.
Next, we've got the second reading of the Headland Vocational Center renaming. Chris Martin.
Chair Dunlap, members of the board, we talked about this briefly at last month's meeting. This is an attempt to better reconcile the naming of the Headland building with the current uses of that building. The building references the Vocational Education Center, and at this time that's frankly not how we refer to any of our programs, and it doesn't really meet the tenet of the policy and the idea that the building naming would represent what's happening in that space. So that's the request tonight, is that we could change that to simply the Headland building.
Questions for Vice President Martin?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the request to rename the building the Headland Building.
Trustee Howard has made a motion to approve the change in naming. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I will,
Motion's been made and seconded to approve renaming of the Headland building. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries to rename the Headland building.
Chair Dunlap,
Yes,
who provided the second, please?
was that Brad or Christie who provided the second? Or Todd, maybe?
It was Todd.
Okay.
I think it was Brad.
It was Brad.
Oh,
It was Brad. It was
Got
Brad.
it, thank you.
So somebody just needs to take credit for it.
I've got it. Thank you, Murray. Murray.
Okay. Under new business, we've got the first reading of the revised policy 3.01 employee classifications. And that's with Karen Hubbard, our Director of Human Resources.
Right, thank you, Chair Dunlap, trustees. The first policy here in your tab 3 is on employee classifications. And before I get into this one, I just want to mention that a number of our employee policies administered out of HR office are in need of update. And so this group is the first of probably a number that you'll see over the upcoming months and potentially years as we work through these. So the first is on employee classifications, and we've moved away from the system of categories numbered 1 through 6, and have really, those have not been in practical application, I would say, for quite some time. Instead, we use the classifications that you see proposed here in this policy. And I would stand for any questions.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Yes, Trustee Wood.
I'm glad we have a month to spend a little more time on this. And Karen, with your permission, I'd like to call you directly with any specific questions. I really need more time to go through this and the next one as well.
Absolutely, I would welcome that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Karen? All right, next we've got, let me find my place on the agenda here, scroll back up to the top. Karen, go ahead on to the next proposed policy change.
This really reflects, it is intended to document the process that we're using now. It removes those references again to those original categories laid out in the previous policy. And that's the summary. Pretty much, it's quite brief.
Trustee Dunlap, or Chair Dunlap.
Yes. Yeah, Trustee Banducci, go ahead.
Banducci. Yeah, first off, I'm with Christie about one more time, but I do have a few comments. I've looked at tabs 3, 4, and 5, and I particularly have some comments on 4 and 5. So I guess I'll throw them out there for consideration, and Karen can respond now or later or as appropriate. But I'll start with the first one, which is the 3.02.03. And as I look at it, just some 10,000 foot level thoughts. As I look at it, it's like there's a lot of power, a lot of discretion, a lot of authority given to the hiring manager, whoever that might be, and that's not as clearly defined as I'd probably like, and to Karen herself. And please don't be offended by any of this, Karen, but as an HR person, I wonder sometimes, you know, as you look particularly at faculty, how you're going to know exactly what's going to be required of that faculty member in their particular discipline and where they're at. When I look at this, I don't see, you know, in the policy about a formal interview process or a faculty review process, you know, looking at the, where's the input from some of the folks in say that department, those people that are, you know, rubber meets the road, I guess, that are teaching it on a daily basis and would have a real good handle on what's required. So, you know, I think there'd be some sort of, like I say, a faculty review process, an interview process, something there from the people that would have a daily understanding of the qualifications that the applicant would need. And again, especially I'm referring to faculty applicants, where I think that's a more unique situation. You know, maybe if it's a clerical or staff and some of that, maybe not so much. But, you know, should there be a faculty committee or you know, maybe with the division chair, you know, and maybe there should be some recommendation about candidates or maybe a final candidate to their vice president of instruction, something like that. So that's kind of just my thoughts on the tab 4 on the first one. It's just, are we delineating out the right roles and responsibilities and who has the, you know, responsibility and authority there, and how that looks practically as you evaluate the applicants, again, particularly in a faculty situation.
Trustee Banducci, I would respond to that in that I think the intent of this policy is a higher level than what you're referring to, and certainly those things are being done. We have some framework for that that's administered out of HR that does provide for consistency across positions as we do these recruitments, and they are different for faculty and for staff, and so some of those processes are different. This policy really speaks to just the approval, and that structure will be set up by human resources so that each hiring manager has some guidance and some framework for that so that we can create consistency across the college. Those processes in terms of the details about how committees operate, how we use them, the parameters we use to determine, you know, hires for a given position, those do vary by position and by division, and so and so I think for that reason are not included in that detail in, you know, policy really or procedure, maybe to the detail that you were describing.
Yeah, because when I look at the procedure, which we have the accompanying procedures for these policies, that was not obvious to me. It was not intuitive that we had those procedures or those practices in place. And I look at the procedure, the effective date of the procedure is 6/26/96. So that hasn't been updated in 24 years. So that makes me wonder, is that procedure current and where we would want that to be 24 years after its initial writing to reflect, you know, what we're doing or what we want to do?
Sure, and we have updated the procedure as well. I'm not sure whether that was provided to you.
I have procedure 3.02.03, effective date 6/26/96. There's a line underneath it for revised, but there's no date there. So that's what I'm looking at. That was what was provided to me.
I'm sorry, I don't have that document in front of me, the version that you might have for the procedure. I only have the policies. So I would imagine that those are the updated procedures that you have and that date had not been updated. Maybe Shannon could confirm for us.
The procedures that were sent to the trustees are the newly revised. The date hasn't been added because the policy itself has not been approved yet. The dates will coincide with one another. So what you have in your hands, Todd, is the most recently revised procedure.
Okay, because there's no red or blue or anything like that. So has it been approved then already? Has the procedure been approved?
It was
Just
approved
waiting
by,
to be dated?
it was approved by Senate and the president, which is the process for procedure. It will be dated when the policy is approved.
Okay, because I did see that the policy had the same effective date, so that makes sense if you're going to coincide the dates. Okay, that would be consistent then. I just couldn't tell if this had been worked on yet or not, so, okay.
The question you asked Trustee Banducci related to faculty, and so I'm going to ask Dr. Burns if she has anything she would like to add to that.
Thank you, Chair Dunlap and Trustee Banducci. NIC also has a faculty employment policy. I'm sorry, I'm not quick enough on my device to look it up to give you the exact policy number, but there's a policy and procedure, and that particular policy and procedure is currently under revision as well, and is getting toward the final stages of being able to be presented to Senate for review, for final review, and then will come before the board.
Thank you. Mr. Chair?
Yes, Trustee Wood.
Well, I would have to agree with Todd that I guess I have a few concerns about the procedure maybe not matching what the goal is for consistency. And so I'm glad to hear, Lita, that there's an additional policy, and I'm just wondering how the two, does one supersede the other? Do they comport well together? That's important. That's my first question. And then I'll let you answer that one, and then I have another question.
Thank you, Chair Dunlap. Trustee Wood, yes, they will. One will align with the other very well.
Okay, it would be great to see those procedures as well, because I think it is important, if you're looking for consistency, that we know exactly how these interviews are going to go based on the positions. But my more important discussion for me tonight is the strikeout area, and it'd be on page 2, and it's the bottom paragraph. And the strikeout is that the compliance with North Idaho College affirmative action procedure is required. So basically that's been removed. And this, to me, the new policy, it really looks like a workaround. We would not be complying with affirmative action, yet we have an affirmative action policy. So I'd like to have some good discussion on that, whatever you can tonight, but also I'm happy to call Karen as well.
Trustee Wood, I don't think there was any intention of not complying with any existing policy or procedure. That procedure stands. I'd be more than happy to have an additional conversation with you on this.
Okay, well, in the new policy, Karen, basically that's no longer required for new hires to comply with the affirmative action policy. So how do we make sure it's being complied with if it's not required?
I think that is laid out in the affirmative action policy and procedure.
And I do have that. I have that as well. And so I guess the bigger question is going to be, how do these policies work together? And are we clear that one won't supersede the other?
I think, oh, Chris, do you want to go ahead?
Chair Dunlap, Trustee Wood, if I may, with respect to Karen, I appreciate her efforts as the new CHRO. Some of these policies and procedures coincide when I had oversight over human resources. So I want to give Karen a pass on some of this, and I'm happy to provide some more context. Currently, HR is going through a process of revising all of our policies. And we started at the beginning of the series by design, so that we can ensure as each of these policies comes forward to the board, they conform with one another and they don't conflict. And some of the things that we're seeing is, as we've done a full review of our policies, at times, the policies have not been done in such a way where they coincide. And so our effort in this process of going all the way through our HR policies is to make sure that we don't conflict policies with policies.
I appreciate that. It looks like there is a conflict. So, but I'm happy to call Karen on that and you, Chris, and work through that some more.
All right, thank you, Trustee Wood. Maybe we can bring that back or have Karen bring that back at the second reading at the next meeting.
Perfect.
Karen, why don't you go ahead with the first reading of the reclassification of positions?
So this this procedure has, or policy, excuse me, has some significant
Karen, you hit mute.
sorry about that. So this policy on reclassifications has been revised in order to.
You're off. You're muted again.
I'm not sure how that keeps happening. My apologies. This reclassification policy has been revised to take a more proactive approach than has been taken in the past, so that the college and employees can prepare for, including budgeting for, changes in staff positions.
All right, any questions? Go ahead, Trustee Banducci.
Thank you, sir. As I alluded to previously, I'm going to kind of take the same tack with this one. I have some of the same concerns a little bit about this one with reclassification, and the fact of, again, particularly in the case of the faculty, that maybe there's an oversized voice for the HR and the admin in the process. Even with the reclassification, I'm still wondering, where are there the proper qualification checks? Is there the proper teaching demonstration? Is there the proper faculty interview? Is the process going out there? Is the person qualified? Is there appropriate for a competitive search? Internally, what are our checks and balances? Because one person in a certain position could have such an autonomy in this process, or a couple people, that it could shortcut or short circuit the process a little bit even. I mean, I'd be curious to get a couple of examples of like, to illustrate to me kind of what's being changed, because I mean, you could have where there's a situation of, I don't know, maybe a special appointment being moved to the tenure track or something. I mean, there's all sorts of ways that this could go. And I guess I'd like to better understand, how we're going to utilize this. So again, maybe Karen can give me a couple examples, because it still looks to me like we've got the same couple folks that are really driving the bus. And in particularly in the faculty situation, I don't see the peer input and the faculty involvement there. And then that process, again, looking at the procedure and looking down that next level of, I just don't want it to be, hey, this is my friend and they're teaching, and so I'm just going to kind of do this and move them over, and hey, it was all good, because I could do that. Yeah, I want to know that that's not where we're going to be. So maybe a couple examples, Karen, of what you have in mind with this.
Sure. So, Trustee Banducci, this policy and procedure only relate to non-faculty positions. So this would be for our staff positions only, and it wouldn't relate to position searches, but the position itself. So if we had, let's say as an example, an administrative assistant that perhaps when the position was originally developed and approved, it was intended to be primarily reception for an office. And then as that office grows, the position needs to support a broader range of positions in a number of different ways, including, budget development, and takes on a significant, or we want the position to take on significant additional responsibilities that might be more in line with our senior administrative assistants. This is the process by which an employee, a manager, a president's cabinet member could facilitate that change of the position that the board approved as an administrative assistant to elevate that position to a senior administrative assistant based on the needs of the department and the college.
I appreciate the clarification. It wasn't clear to me that this was ex-faculty. I was thinking it was inclusive of them also. So I guess I'll hold my thought on the concern really to tab 4 then, just on that. So really, it sounds like the changes that you're proposing under this reclassification, I don't mean to diminish the changes, but it sounds like they're not that significant in the sense of, you know, just a natural evolution of a position. Would that be fair? Would that be fair to categorize it that way?
Trustee Banducci, I don't think that this represents a significant difference. It's in terms of what we're doing, the changing of positions or the process that we go through in evaluating that. What it does do is clarify that, you know, that the process be more proactive rather than waiting until that change in the position has occurred and then addressing it after the fact.
And you would feel that there's adequate participation because of the way that this reclassification is requested, to have the supervisor and appropriate people within the department and the chain of command engaged at the appropriate level, that they're endorsing it and supporting that?
Trustee Banducci, I do believe that that's the case. This can be initiated by any, you know, any of those parties, as I mentioned, but has to have multiple levels of review and approval, not just on whether or not it happens, but we require approval of all of the job documentation by the supervisor and all of the levels of management, if there are multiple, up to the president's cabinet member. And that's before HR reviews it, you know, and would then either concur or not.
Thank you for explaining that to me.
Mr.
All right.
Chair,
Yes, Trustee Wood.
couple of questions, and this is probably more directed toward Rick. Rick, with this policy change, and the very last page, 2 of 2, requests, it says, would not be more frequently than once in a 24-month period. My 2 cents is I'd like to see that adjusted also to it will not come, there will not be an adjustment unless it's made during the budget, the normal course of the budget process, because mid-year changes mean additional salary. Not that it's not deserved, but it's mid-year. And so I'd like to see this policy make it clear that it has to come forward during a budget process, any of these reclassifications. And then my second point is, as much as people, normally we find ourselves working more and more, that's just the nature of the kind of service industry business we're in. And so you do tend to reclassify and move up. But there's also employees that maybe need to do a voluntary demotion because they really aren't wanting a higher level that they've been put in, or maybe they can't maintain that higher level. And I don't know if this policy allows for that. For those employees we definitely want to keep, but we're not going to keep them working at the at, say, an administrative level, secretarial level. Maybe we can find a place for them with less strenuous duties. And I want to know if this policy goes both ways.
That's a great question. I just had to scroll back up to the top, and Karen, maybe you can help me with this, but I don't see anything that would prevent it from going both ways. It's a reclassification procedure. So I suppose that could happen. With respect to the timing and the budget, it does state at the very beginning of the procedure that in order to be considered, that the timeline would need to be initiated between July and November of each year. That does, I think, and Karen, correct me if I'm wrong on that as well, but I think that was intended to get it looped into the budget development cycle.
Okay.
Trustee Wood,
think
I would add that that absolutely was part of the intent, certainly. Again, in terms of that being proactive allows us to be, better stewards of the college's resources, certainly, and more intentional on a broader scale, looking at positions instead of one by one, but perhaps looking at them more holistically along with the rest of the budget as you described, and balancing our needs that way. In regards to your question on moving positions, could they be reclassified up or down, if you will? The answer is yes, they can, and they have been. They are from time to time. It's certainly not nearly as frequent as reclassifications that increase, grade based on an increase in responsibility. That's far more frequent. But it would apply to changes either in one direction or the other.
Okay, very good. I will look for that language, Rick. I think that is important, that it does not, out of a budget cycle, we aren't, essentially you're creating a new position, or you're reclassifying. And not that I'm opposed to that, but I do think it should be part of the budget process.
Trustee Dunlap, Chair Wood, this particular procedure has had a lot of interest on my part for those very reasons. And I appreciate the work that's been done to put some structure around the process so that we can have some more consistent and predictable consideration of these kinds of changes.
Thank you.
All right. Karen, thank you very much for bringing those 3 policies forward. We look forward to seeing you at the second reading at our next meeting. Next on the agenda is information items, and we have a spring enrollment update by Dr. Stanley.
Thank you very much. Chair Dunlap, trustees, President McGlynn, colleagues and friends joining us here tonight. I'm going to try to share the screen with you, see if I can bring this up where you can see it. Are you able to see that now?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Okay. Hopefully you're all able to see that now. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to provide this report to you tonight. Also, many thanks to Diana Rins and her staff for helping provide the numbers and the information and the PowerPoint. I know Diana's standing by. If I need support here, I've got her and my other colleagues to jump in if there are questions that I can't answer. Want to note once again that you might recall, I think it was in about 2013 or just a year or two after that, we changed our census dates for reporting. This is information that came as of March 15th. So not very long ago, so fairly current enrollment information. Most of its comparisons, and certainly in the last 3 or 4 years, are to a March 15th date from previous years. It used to be we were 10 days into the start of the semester, and now we go that March 15th in the spring. So let me jump into this, and in case I miss you, just holler out if you have some questions. An apology for a few of you that got this earlier. I added slides and changed a couple things, but not too different, but wanted to just highlight some information. First slide that wasn't sent out in the original version, but is up on the screen, just gets it from a high level view from spring 19 to spring 2020, the difference in headcount. was about 2.28% down. The difference in credits was 3.36% down. And of course, credits are like FTE count, so 3.36% down. I'd like to note, although we're talking about a decrease, when we were doing some budget planning mid-year and looking at what spring was going to look like, we were working really hard with faculty and with staff and everybody involved in trying to make sure we could retain a higher percentage of students than we generally do from fall to spring, and also bring in some new students starting school in spring of 2020. I think originally we were projecting we might be 5 or 6% down, and we finished better than anticipated that way. And I think that really goes to a concerted intentional effort that we made to bring more students back or into the system for spring 2020. So appreciate that good work done by all of our folks. The next slide that comes up is for spring enrollment, a graph here that talks about new students versus continuing students. On the top, of course, is continuing students. And you note with that is a fairly steady decline. Through all of these slides, there isn't anything that really stands out. We've been following the trend for a number of years like other institutions. So our decreases and increases are fairly similar. The bottom line is for new students coming into our system. So you see it's been pretty stable. One of the misconceptions sometimes for some folks is there are many fewer students coming in our front door, if you will. And in fact, that's not the case. If you look for spring, and it was much the same in the fall, the number of students coming into the institution on the front side remained fairly stable. Those haven't changed much. A dramatic decrease though in the continuing student enrollment. We talk a lot at the institution about so much of our emphasis needs to be on the retention of students. That's why when you heard us talking about the COVID-19 implications, having relationships with our students, demonstrating the value that the institution has, encouraging them to come back is really critical. We were already struggling a bit with retention as other schools have as well. And so that's certainly an area of emphasis for us, not only the recruitment on the front side. Let me take you to the next slide if I can. It's the full and part-time headcount. And it, again, just to bring this to your attention, the very top one, the top line is total. So that's full-time and part-time headcount. The middle line, the orange one in your color there, is part-time headcount. You notice from spring 2019 to spring 2020, the part-time headcount, the graph doesn't show it well, but actually went up just a little bit. And then the full-time headcount is the purple line down at the bottom. It's been declining. Part-time participation has gone up a little bit more, while the full-time participation has decreased. Any questions about that? Again, nothing outstanding as you follow through the graph. I think what doesn't surprise any of you, and the board asked for this a couple of years ago, and thanks to Diane and her staff for providing this, we have that bubble that's pretty consistent in there when we look at those years of 2008, 2009 through 15 or so with our economy, what was happening. And so we see such an impact on our enrollment. Likewise, when we get into 2017 through 20 and the economy improves and students have the opportunity to go to work, you see what's happened. And that's certainly common across higher education. If you take the bump out, the change isn't nearly as dramatic.
Trustee Howard has a question.
Yeah, back at that full-time, part-time headcount. When I look at those three lines, they're using different scales on there, I take it, because the part-time headcount between 2012 and 2020, it's pretty close to the same. But when we look at the full-time headcount, it's half of in 2020 what it was in 2012, numbers-wise. And that's a pretty dramatic difference. One's fairly steady, the other one is the full-time headcount is dramatically different. It's half of what it was back in 2012 and 13.
Trustee Howard, you're right. Whoops, let me back up there. You're right about that. And Diana, if you want to jump in, we struggled a little bit. I think looking at the raw numbers is much more accurate than looking at the graph. I was looking at 19 to 20 on spring. And even though it went up a little bit, this is on part-time, you notice the graph shows it going down a little bit. So I think you're right, Trustee Howard, about you have to look at the numbers, and the graph is scaled differently, so it doesn't give you the representation that follows the numbers. Diana, did you have anything to add on that?
Thanks, Graydon. I hope that you all can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay. I do apologize for this slide. The visual representation of the data just is not ideal. The slide type that we chose initially was intended to squeeze quite a bit of data onto a single slide. And as I reviewed this with my team earlier this afternoon, we realized that it wasn't really illustrating accurately in a visual pattern what the data numbers were actually showing. And so I only can apologize for the visual representation here. Certainly, my intention was that it would be beautiful for you for the board report tonight, and things have been a little busy around. So I do apologize. I can get you a better slide, but those numbers are accurate. So if you'll take a look at the numbers themselves and not the lines, the numbers are accurate. The visual representation is just not right for this slide, and I'm sorry for that.
Thank you, Diana. Trustee Howard, to what you said, certainly you look at the difference in 2012 to 20 on full-time, it's dramatic, and it's, you know, what, 1,600 or so different. And then on the part-time, it's barely any different at all. Certainly, again, we know as the economy improves, more students are able to go to school full-time because they have employment, and they more often go part-time. So I think that's why you see some changes in those numbers as well.
Go ahead.
I didn't mean to be critical of the graph, particularly. I was impressed with the numbers and how different they were for the full-time versus part-time headcount. And that's a trend I'm wondering if we should be looking at for the future, that people are trending more toward part-time work or part-time education and less full-time, and if that would impact the way we run some of our programs.
This is Diana. I certainly can say that trend is in alignment with national trends. Institutions, particularly community colleges, of course, have more part-time students, and certainly that's one of the many factors that we will have to take into consideration planning programs in the future.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Stanley, you can go ahead and move forward.
Thank you. Next one is head count by student type. The largest bar graph there is general studies, our transfer students. The one in the middle, kind of the pink or peach colored, is dual credit, and the gray is career and technical. And again, I think what's noteworthy is probably two things. The trend is much the same. You don't see in one area or the other too often big differences. What is notable, and no surprise to any of you, is when dual credit really took off. You see some steady increase in dual credit, but then you get into 2015, 16, 17 and see what starts happening to the dual credit numbers. Where at one time they were less than CTE, you start looking at about 2015, they exceed CTE and they continue to climb. It steadied out a little bit in the last year or two. As we look at the delivery of instruction, other peoples who are providing dual credit, and look at some of what dual credit has provided for students. And then spring enrollment by age band. I always find this kind of interesting to look at graphically. You can see any differences between spring of 2015 and spring of 2020. And probably again, what stands out is huge growth in the under 18. That used to not be the case. We didn't talk about that much. And then dual credit came on this, and you see the incredible growth from 534 back in spring 2015 to over 1,100 in spring of 2020. So that's the area that really stands out for us, is that incredible change in that age band. I think, Trustee Howard, to what you said earlier too, and I was having this conversation with Diane, and we'll discuss this in our strategic enrollment management meetings, is looking at market share here too, because we know in our age grouping that that's decreasing. The under 18, that traditional age group, that number is going to be decreasing the next 10 years or so. But we also know that in these other areas, in the 21 to 25 or 26 to 30, and then the 30 to 50, that we are not getting a big percentage of market share, and that's where maybe some of our marketing efforts are going to have to be. We'll have to focus more energy and resources in other areas. The state has tried to recognize that by incentivizing with scholarship and other programs as well. We need to jump on board and see what that need is in the region that we serve.
Chair Dunlap?
Yes.
Question for Graydon. Just curious. I'm curious about the super seniors and the 79 that we have there. What kind of programs are offered that those folks are taking?
All of this, thank you, Chair Dunlap and Trustee Murray. I suspect, and Lita, or I know that Vicky's on here as well tonight, if you want to jump in there. This is all by credit. So oftentimes where you see any growth in that is non-credit or developmental kinds of things, community education things. Those aren't counted in these numbers. So some of this is probably fitness classes, I suspect. Much of it is just out of an area of interest in a particular discipline. I don't think there has been targeted programming in a credit sense at a more, how would I like to describe us, a more mature age group, Trustee Murray.
Thank you.
Total credit hours is the next slide. So looking at total credit hours, again, following the exact same pattern, spring 7 through spring 20. And so total credit hours follows consistently what we're seeing among those three. The variance here sometimes is that dual credit had the growth, but then we had the decrease in full-time and part-time and transfer and CTE. Average credit hours for full-time and part-time students. Understanding that, so of students who choose to be full-time, that is 12 credits or more. The average load over these years has stayed at about 14. Full-time is 12 credits or more. The average is 14. Part-time is obviously less than 12, 11 and less. And so those students who choose to be part-time, their average credit load is 6. Average credits taken by student type. And interesting on this, again, this is full-time students only. So to qualify to be here, you have to be enrolled in 12 or more credits. So general studies, you see, has been 14 consistently. Career and technical has been around 15, career 16 and 15. And often, by the way, on career and technical, those are not students choosing individual courses. Those are courses where they have a load every semester that they're required to take. It has to be 15 or has to be 16, or in some cases it was more. Those are all programmed together. So they don't often have the choice to take less, but dual credit is interesting. So for those students who are full-time and dual credit, their average credit load is 15. Those aren't large numbers. Those are a few, but those are some highly motivated, highly able students who, when they jump in, I think, with a motivation to graduate by the time they graduate from high school. We've seen such an increase in that. And so they're taking 15 credits a semester if they choose to be full-time, the average. And that was it. Trustees, I'd be glad to answer any questions or have my colleagues jump in if there are other things that you'd like to know.
Any questions for Dr. Stanley?
I guess I would like to make a comment anyway. In the past, when you've given us these reviews, we've asked you to go back, give us some context, and these graphs were really helpful. I want to thank you very much for the work that was done on these, because at least for me, I could sit and look at the graphs and get a better understanding of where we've been and where we're headed, and so I appreciate it.
Thank you, Trustee Howard. I appreciate that. Thanks to my colleagues for their support, particularly Diana and her staff on that.
All right, thank you, Dr. Stanley.
Thank you.
Well, next we have a informational item, an update on COVID-19 with Laura Ruppler.
Trustee Dunlap, if I could just jump in for a brief moment.
You bet.
Prior to that. So this agenda actually reflects how quickly this situation has been changing. When we put this agenda together, gosh, a couple of weeks ago now, Laura's name was put there because she was going to be helping chair a continuity of operations team as we were looking to probably something not near as dramatic as the place we've gotten to today. And so I would like to ask her to start, but there's probably another half a dozen people here who the board may have questions for or can offer some contribution to where we are with COVID-19 in extension of my general comments earlier. And I'll leave that to the board but you may have questions, and we have a whole group here that can, I know can respond to them. So Laura, why don't you go ahead?
Absolutely. So just to give you a higher level big picture, and then what we're doing locally with North Idaho College, and just want to double check, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. So we start our mornings every morning getting situational updates from our local partners, Panhandle Health District. We work very closely with our first responders, as well as we're on a state call every morning with all of the other higher ed institutions in Idaho, as well as representatives from the governor's office and other key folks. So we continue this theme of continuity, clarity, and communicating with one another as we're walking this out as a whole entire higher ed institution leadership team across the state of Idaho. We did, as President McLennan mentioned, form a couple of weeks ago a core group called the COOP planning team. So that represents continuity of operations plans. We've had several continuity of operations plans, especially in our key areas around finance and facilities and instructional operations. But what we did was we brought a group of people together, and so far we've submitted over 31 unique plans specific to different departments and areas of North Idaho College that are specific to the pandemic planning around COVID-19. We've been meeting with that group on a weekly basis, and we continue to ask the questions. Where are our deficiencies? Where are our gaps? Where are our opportunities? And where do we need to share information with one another? Then, as you saw, because the president's been keeping you involved with all of the different communications we've been doing, he uplifted a crisis response team about 2 weekends ago. I don't know, every day now is just all meshed into one. And so that crisis response team is led by President McLennan. It has our 3 VPs on it, and then it also has our 3 chief officers, myself, Karen Hubbard, Chief Human Resources Officer, and then of course Ken Wardensky, our IT guru, AKA Chief IT Officer or Technology Officer. We also, as I mentioned before, are in daily contact, if not multiple times a day, with our key partners. We are working side by side with Panhandle Health District. Every single time we communicate information out or we change some sort of operational status, we run it by them, we check with them, they approve it, they are supportive of it, and we continue the work with that. Around communications, I believe the board has seen multiple communications that we've been sending out to our employees through the NICDAO, through direct communications, through texts and other means. We've also been doing that on the student side because the students are our customers. It came up the other day that there was a question that it seems like through everyone's email stream right now, right? Every single company you've ever worked with, every nonprofit you have ever worked with, they've done a COVID-19 message. And some people have asked us why we didn't push something out to the entire community. Well, as you remember, we are a public institution and serving our customers who are our students. So we've been communicating directly with our students and our employees, and then also doing some other outreach out to our communities and our key partners and key circles of influence. Recently, we actually just yesterday, we filmed a public service announcement with a couple of our key coaches on our athletic side of the house. And so we're going to be pushing that out on social media in the next 24 to 48 hours, very specific with regards to social distancing and what it means for the younger generation to understand what they can do to help protect others with regards to social isolation and staying apart from one another. Diana and I just finished a survey today that we're going to push out to our employees to see how this telecommuting is going. Do they have their needs met? Are they feeling connected? So we're really trying to keep that employee morale and that connection when we're apart from one another, really strong and focused. These are definitely uncertain times. I just cannot say enough about the key leadership across this campus and our president and the VPs of how they've leaned in. They are definitely givers. They are compassionate, and we are trying to do everything we can through this unique situation to add that personal touch to everything we do. And that's my report.
Trustees, any questions for Laura or any other members of the staff?
Mr. Chair, just a comment.
Yes, Trustee Wood.
Well, I just really want to express how impressed I've been with the level of communication, and I know that's taken a lot of late midnight hours from everyone. I really appreciate that the team got ahead of this. I mean, they're not just waiting for today when the governor issues this stay-at-home order. North Idaho College has been ahead of this, and there's been some decisions that had to be made that were made based on the information we had at the time, and I think they were the right decisions. And so I just want to express my appreciation for how hard you've all been working to keep us in the loop, and most importantly, our faculty, our staff, and our students. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Wood. Any other comments? If not,
I do apparently have one, sir. I am so sorry. I just had one of those YouTube-like moments. I did not realize it until someone messaged me in the chat that I had one of my younger height disadvantaged coworkers zip by when I was giving that update. So I apologize for that.
it was no worries there, Laura. Next, we have board chair report. And the only thing I want to comment on is to echo what Trustee Wood said. As I've watched the college operate over the last several weeks, as this virus has gotten progressively worse and as more measures needed to be put in place, it has been absolutely remarkable, the communication and the work and the thoughtfulness that all of you have done. And so President McLennan and the VPs and all the staff, I want to commend you on what a super job you've done. I want to thank you on behalf of the trustees and the community for everything you do for us. And I want you to continue to be safe. Are there any remarks for the good of the order?
Mr. Chair, I do have one.
Yes, Trustee Wood.
I just want to update on behalf of the city. As you know, the city had to make some tough decisions too and shut down bars and restaurants, and we're just a couple of days ahead of the governor. But I also want to say that the mayor has been working exceptionally hard to keep in touch with the governor's office and our local delegation to help those small businesses and such and employees that are trying to get their workman's comp earlier. And I wanted to tell you that he did reach out, and I passed it on to the president, and he is working with Ryan Arnold. And we are working with the chamber and have invited the college to be part of the team. there's so many small businesses there that have an opportunity to apply for the federal grant. And Ryan is going to be part of that team to help people with their paperwork, refer small businesses to the experts that know how to handle this. I'm not sure if Bill Young is going to be part of it as well, but I'm just so grateful to the college for stepping up with the community and maybe helping these small businesses that could really use a hand right now.
Thank you, Trustee Wood. Any other comments for the good of the order?
Trustee Dunlap, I just wanted to just tell you how much I appreciated your comments, Trustee Wood as well. A lot of the people you see in the squares here are the folks that are responsible for where we are with our continuity of operations, and it's just been incredible, especially, and everybody's doing triple duty, but our instructional administrators and the work that the faculty have done to really do something that they've never even attempted before on the scale that they're attempting it is really to be commended. But it goes throughout the entire organization. And one of my notes I sent out earlier, we talked a little bit about the spirit of teamwork. That,
you know why you in the corner?
And anyway, I know everybody appreciates your comments. And so thank you so much. It means a lot.
Well, thank you, everybody. These are difficult times, and they're times that we've never seen before, even if you're as old as I am or Trustee Howard. But I know you're hanging in there and you're doing a great job, but make sure you stay safe yourself. So thank you very much, and this meeting is adjourned.
All right.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everybody.